All right, let's get going. Today is July 18, 2024. Yes. This is the SIG Network regular meeting. The code of conduct applies here, so don't be a jerk. Everybody be nice to each other. And that said, let's get started. We have actually a fair number of things on the agenda for today. And I didn't prep triage, but let me just load that up real quick and we can do it. Issues needs triage. Perfect. I'm going to share a window. Let me pull it off. Hold on, I lost it. Share window issues. All right, everybody see that?
Yep.
All right. Let's start at the top and see what's new. We have Kube Proxy Contract Reconciler. Antonio, why don't you tell us about what you're doing there?
There was a new wave of contract issues reported on Kuproxy, and Dan and I don't know the GitHub handle TNQN reported that the logic that tracks deletes the state contract entries is event based. So if it gets out of sync, you are going to end with this state contract entries that can black hole. So I think that ideally, if we have all the services and endpoint information, and we get all the contract information from the kernel, we can figure out what are the difference and reconcile and just delete the ones that shouldn't be there. And that will solve all these problems, and we don't need to do this complex logic of knowing if this service got removed or got added a new endpoint or whatever thing. And the man stepped up to work on this and during the next cycle.
Do we have actually enough information? Like in the case of a service that used to exist or a pod that used to exist with a contract record that still exists, do we have enough information to know that that contract record corresponds to a pod or a service and should be cleaned up? Especially in the case of UDP, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, because starting the next release, we have the service. We know the service right?
Okay, we do know the service siders.
Yeah, already Dan and the man already added that, right?
We only clean up contract entries that are explicitly wrong. So we will leave behind ones that are stale but harmless, and they will eventually time out.
No, but I think that what Tim says is, imagine, how do you know this contract entry belong to a service or to another thing?
So we only remove ones that are actively harmful. So if we know that service X ought to point to endpoint Y, and we find contract entries that say service X has no endpoints, we remove that. If we don't know about a contract entry, we just leave it there.
Oh, okay, we always have the service, right?
So we only do it when we have an affirmative conflict, not when we have something that is obsolete but not harmful.
Because the obsolete but non-harmful ones will eventually time out on their own.
Or the IP will get reused and then we'll clean them up on demand, right? Okay, yes. I guess I buy that. Can we, Antonio or Dan, can you, if you're doing this, can you like edit the title to make it more like a verbal, add contract reconciler or something, just so that it's clear that this is a feature enhancement? I'm going to go ahead and triage. Yeah. We okay to accept triage?
Yeah.
The only, I remember to talk with Florian Westphal, like when I was at Red Hat, and the only problem that I started something back in the time is that you need to dump the whole contract entry. And somebody replied there that said that you no longer need to do that, because if every X seconds you need to dump all the flows from contract, it was expensive. But since that was fixed. I will.
I've looked at the way we exec contract today, and I have many times started this isn't correct, and like let's fix it and do a full reconciler, and then realize, oh, this is actually complicated, and then put it away. So I'm glad that we're opening it up again. It seems relevant. All right, next, flaky test, cost master, slow, load balancer test. We have information.
Oh, that.
Yeah, we have a PR for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
That.
Another one.
No, this is a problem with I worked with teams. So the problem is that I was shocked. The deans didn't know that you cannot. The thing of all the pods need to reach other pods without nothing, right? And when they go through a service, they need to retain the original IP. So he was confused. He had masquerading in his class. He's setting up
okay.
a new jobs in Amazon, and he was masquerading the traffic, and he didn't know. So one of the conclusion is: should we promote this to conformance?
So pod to pod traffic has to be non-masqueraded, but
Pass
service to
through.
pod traffic is allowed to be masqueraded.
So okay, the test is not saying that. You need to retain to cluster AP.
So the way we wrote the network model stuff was all about pod to pod and didn't say anything about services, right?
Okay, this test is there since forever.
Yeah, I believe you that the test is there, but we have a lot of tests that were sort of very coupled to the implementation, and we need to decide if that was the intention or not. So, Dan, what you just said seems like an undefined area. Have we ever defined that a service must not NAT?
No, because kubeproxy has the masquerade all option that makes it masquerade everything, right? So we explicitly support this.
So let me restate that. Conformance says you must be able to turn on a conformant cluster, not that every cluster must be conformant. So if you turn off masquerade all, then your cluster could be conformant.
The assumption is that it is there for CNI plugins that set up the network in such a way that it would not work without masquerading, right? Because why would you want to enable that if you didn't have to?
Well, I agree. I sort of wish we didn't have it.
Yeah, it's okay. Then you better keep it that way. Every time that we do something with this is a name. What I think that can break it if somebody has a shape proxy or something like that and uses space proxy, then they will not be able to keep the original.
That's right. So requiring non-NAT means you cannot have a user space proxy in that way.
Yeah, and then we enter in a new kind of work. So it's better to be this way.
Okay. So triage accept or?
No, we can cross this. Okay, I will follow up with Teams.
Okay.
No
Incorrect endpoint slice metrics for dual stack. Oh, shocking.
This is a very good one and really deserves reading. The description is really good. We have a lot of these things. We have this in kubeproxy too.
Lino, it looks like, and I know you're doing a lot of work on endpoint slice controller right now, and it looks like you've also assigned yourself to this one. Is this one you're volunteering to fix?
Yeah, I created a pull request for it.
Oh, awesome. Great.
So if you're accepting a bug, you can say triage accept. Actually, I don't know who can say triage accept. I will accept it. Cool, thank you. Dropped UDP packets on pod restart. Anybody knows this one?
It's the trigger of the reconciler thing.
Oh, okay. Should we close it as a dupe or?
Several of them, I don't know.
Or should you move the reconciler information into this and retitle it? Like where we shouldn't have two that are open for the same topic, right?
Okay, let me handle all of this later because there are 2 or 3 of them. and I will aggregate and improve the description of the reconciler.
Okay, cool.
So assign to me, and then. Okay.
All right. Using server-side apply for an ingress failed when updating ingress backend from port number to port name. Ugh. Okay.
This is for you.
Yeah, thanks. Port number. Yeah. All right, I'll look at it. We have so many server-side apply issues. I'm not even sure how to express it. All right, I'll take that one. Next. Flaking tests. Services should release node ports on delete.
There was a PR for this. This test. The problem is that eventually one of the node port got reused, right, and makes it fail. But somebody sent a PR to fix this.
You can't retry
Okay,
back in there. 2 PRs.
it's this person that is not familiar with Git, and they just did it and not.
Oh, okay. Who's reviewing that? Is that you, or should I look at it?
I was waiting for them. If somebody wants to pick up the job, because when was the last time that he replied? I mean, okay.
2
Oh, it's,
okay.
so
Well,
if anybody in the meeting wants to pick and keep the co-outsourcing to keep the credit to the person.
well, I mean, give him a little time.
Okay. The thing is that the release is going to cut, and I prefer to get the test straight. When is the
Yeah.
code free? We have code free, we have
I mean,
1 week, 2 weeks.
Test fixes we can get in for code freeze. That's not a problem, right? But I mean, it would be nice to not have the issue, sure. But I also don't want to rip pull requests away from people who are still active on it. So let's try to get a response. And if not, then we can get somebody to finish it. I'll assign it to myself just so I track it. Okay. We'll do one more. Regarding the issue of certificate expiration when accessing links with HTTPS pod access. What? Oh, didn't we look at this one last?
Yeah, we did chat about this last month. What date was that? June 6th, I think.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Cool. Let's stop sharing. Let's switch to the rest of the agenda. Cool. Antonio or Shane talking about Windows Kube Proxy pull request 124092.
Yeah, no, and I see that this Prince from that usually used to maintain the code in Windows Q Proxy. So there was this PR about adding eBPF to Q Proxy Win. That's what I read. So that was please contact the network and tell us more about what you're trying to do, because it's a lot of changes and we don't know about what Windows is going on. And they replied and explaining on this. But I just wanted them to be more integrated with the SIG. It seems that the Windows proxy is living in their own side.
Yeah, it does seem like they're pretty disconnected from the rest of everything. Dan, as the owner of Kube Proxy, do you have any contact with the Windows side of the world?
Hello everyone. This is Prince here,
Oh, hey,
Prince
Prince.
Pereira. Yeah. So I work for the Microsoft Windows Container Networking. Okay, yeah. So any Windows Q proxy related issues, right? You can assign to myself, Shravant, or David, which I already responded back. So yeah. So, and the PR which we raised, right, it was originally in the draft state. So we were not expecting to be reviewed by externally, right? That's why. So then later, like our design was also not frozen. So that's the reason we didn't look into that much. But yeah, in future, any issue happens in the Windows queue proxy side, you can assign to 3 of us.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah, thank
Thanks.
you. Yeah, sorry for the confusion.
No, no worries.
And it would be
honestly,
great- oh,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, it would be great if one of you could make it to the SIG network meeting regularly, because we do get bugs that we're going through in triage that are, Windows, and I mean, I guess we can just assign them all to you for triage, but it would be good sometimes to be able to say, oh yeah, this isn't actually a bug, or this is something we're working on, or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I have been attending last 3-4 meetings. Yeah, but I didn't see any Windows, Microsoft, or Windows QPlex related issues. So that's why I was silent on those meetings. Yeah,
Great.
happy to help here.
I appreciate it. The reality is most of the people here have lots of expertise in Linux and very little in Windows, and it feels bad to be like, I don't know, it's a Windows bug, punt, right? Like Casey's not here, but every time it was a Calico bug, we're like, punt. So
okay.
It feels better to have somebody who's participating. So that's awesome. Thank you for showing up.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the topic was Shane on the Contributor Summit. Shane, I don't see if you're here.
Yeah, I don't think he is.
I think he's on vacation.
Good for him. Well, Salt Lake City KubeCon North America is coming up. Honestly, it's in a couple of months. We have a contributor summit. Please, people who are org members, go sign up if you feel like you should be an org member. Now might be a great time to start the process of becoming one. And if you have topics that you would like to share at the contributor summit, if you want to do a talk, there's very limited talking slots, but there are talking slots. So if you have really cool topics, whether those are for like a room or just for the hallway track, it's time to start building up an agenda. All right, next, me. All right, so there's this KEP open called Relaxed DNS Search Validation, which was really not a huge KEP. It was allowing some characters in the DNS search path that we don't allow in things like object names. We use the same validation for both. The KEP author sort of figured out how we can transition into this new validation. It all seemed very reasonable, and then, as happens sometimes, their life circumstances changed, and they are no longer really available to carry the KEP forward. Feels like a shame to take something that is relatively small KEP and seems uncontroversial and kind of useful. It seems sad to let it die. So I thought I would bring it up here to see if anybody was eager to take a look at this KEP and maybe fold in. There's another issue open on allowing a single dot in search paths. Seems like an opportunity for somebody who wants to get involved to get involved.
I grabbed this one. Well, at least I grabbed the one about the single dot.
Yes.
Which I had assumed was the entire KEP, which I'm happy to try and drive.
So the KEP is a little bit more than the single dot, but it's not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Yeah. I think I assigned myself to the issue to modify the KEP, but I haven't actually assigned myself to any of the other parts. But I'm happy to give it a go.
Awesome. Great. Consider it yours then.
Cool. Do I need to slash assign on one of those?
That's a good question. Let me look. Yeah, probably. Oh, you already assigned on those searches for dots, and can I? Oh, I don't have you in my short list. Yeah, why don't you try to assign yourself on the KEP issue,
cool.
And then send a PR against the KEP.
Cool. I've made a PR.
Awesome.
It's waiting for you.
Oh, I apologize. Cool. it being code freeze week in a few days, or code freeze day in a few days, I have only paid attention to a very small number of code related PRs, but I will shift to this.
No, don't. If it's not urgent, don't worry about it. It can wait.
Well, I mean, the good news is the KEP window will open up as soon as the code freeze is in effect. We can shift back and start looking at KEPs. So rather than wait for the KEP window to start, which we have a habit of doing, we could start right away. Awesome. Next, endpoint slice controller flexibility. Lionel?
Yes. So I shared this idea with Rob and the multi-network group. So the idea is to make the endpoint slice reconciler generic so it can be reused for the endpoint slice mirroring controller, but also for any other use cases. In multi-network, we would need, for example, to select different IPs, not the one that are reported in the pod status. So that's the question that I had was, should I create a new KEP for this, or should I modify the existing one that was about moving the endpoint slice reconciler to staging? And the second idea is to have this or to be able to disable the controller for particular services in the same way as we have with the service proxy name, using a label or an annotation.
Oh,
I think that.
Can you be more? There are a lot of things I really want to parse and not to parse.
So basically, if you remember that we moved endpoint slice controller, a lot of the logic into a package that can be reused, imported, whatever. That logic is tied to the main endpoint slice controller and is not used by the endpoint slice mirroring controller. That's one part of this work, which will be awesome to see it come together. The other part of this work is the idea that if you're going to have custom endpoint slice controllers, it would be really nice to be able to communicate that on service, because right now the only way to do that is just leave an empty selector on the service, and then you find some other way to add a selector, which has always been hacky at best, right?
One question: where do we have the label managed by thing? The endpoint slice?
Yeah,
we have
but that's on the endpoint slice resource.
Yeah.
So getting basically an equivalent to that on the service level would be really helpful. So I think the combination of all that work to me sounds like a home run, and basically cleaning up a variety of tech debt that has lasted for a while. I initially said, when it was just the update endpoint slice mirroring to use that package, we could reuse the existing KEP. But because there's also this new feature, like this new field label, probably label that we're suggesting would exist on service, it feels like a new KEP is probably the most straightforward here. I think that KEP can be relatively small because it's a fairly well scoped idea. My biggest concern would just be that we make sure that we have really good test coverage over endpoint slice controller and endpoint slice mirroring controller. I'm imagining that the logic in endpoint slice controller is not going to change much, but endpoint slice mirroring could have some more significant changes if we're trying to share code, update it to share code with the main one. So, yeah.
Why the need of? I mean, why do you want to share code with the mirroring?
There's a lot of duplicated code. It's not strictly required. I don't know, Lionel. I've spoken a lot, but you probably have a clearer use case for doing that.
I think there's this parameter that says how many endpoints you can move to the endpoint slices using the mirroring controller, because there's no logic to create multiple endpoint slices in the mirroring controller. So having the shared code, you can have the same logic, like creating this multiple endpoint slices and then selecting the one that you should fill this could be beneficial. So you could also remove this parameter.
I would argue that, so yes, that was definitely a pragmatic thing, but I would argue it was also a feature, that the limitation was a feature in my opinion, that we didn't want to, the way endpoint slice mirroring works today, we'll support an endpoint that has up to 1,000 endpoints. We'll just grab the first 1,000 endpoints. And then after that, you should really just be using endpoint slice controller if you need endpoint slices, if you need more than that. And so I would say going back in time and saying, actually, no, you can still use the endpoints API to create thousands of endpoints feels like a step backward. So I don't know that I want to up that limit, but I am open to, I don't know, other ways to do this. I think there is legitimate cleanup that could be achieved by sharing code across controllers. It's really awkward right now that a bug fix in one might not fix a bug in the other, kind of thing. But I would prefer to keep that limitation, even though it's somewhat artificial and contrived, in place.
That's why I was asking this question. What I'm afraid is, in what I'm hearing is, endpoint slice controller can evolve, and if we reuse things, we are going to backport features to some code that should be freeze. And that's why I'm scared, because you know that every time that we have a bug in this controller, it's like spending 5 persons somewhere looking at 2 lines of code and thinking about 200 complex scenarios. The last one that you were involved, Karab was involved, and it was very sad. So that, I mean, my recommendation is, if we want to do changes here, make it independent, right? If we want to change the endpoint slice controller, we do the endpoint slice controller, and if we want to do the mirroring controller, we do the other. But well, Rob, this is your call.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, at a minimum, the thing that I think is valuable is the proposal to allow on service some kind of configuration to have a custom endpoint slice controller. We've done all the work to make it easy to write your own custom endpoint slice controller, and we just kind of left that key part out. I think well thought out code sharing is also useful, though I get that risk, and I think these are the kind of details we can cover in a CAP review of what should be shared and what shouldn't, and what limitations should remain in place and not. But I think this whole discussion is a good case for taking it to a CAP.
Totally. I agree. It seems like a reasonable thing on its face to have a different endpoint collector for services, and a way to choose that in a more obvious way. So who's going to write the CAP? Is it Lionel or you?
I can do it.
Okay. Hopefully it's not a huge CAP, but I expect the issues around code sharing will be, collect a lot of attention. Awesome. Anything else on this?
Yeah, one question is, the CAP is about the two things, or the code sharing and the coupling of the endpoint slice controller, or are both things independent?
Good question.
I feel like in my mind, I feel like they're both small enough that we can try and merge them together. If one ends up being very controversial, then we can pull it out. But I don't think either of these are particularly large. I will admit that code sharing is going to take probably more review bandwidth, but I'm hoping it's still not massive.
Okay. And if we feel like we could get one, but it's being bogged down by the other, then we can split it up.
Exactly.
That's fair. Okay. Last on the agenda, Mr. Stoikos. Are you here?
I'm here. Sorry about that. How are y'all doing? Yep. So we have made, I'd say, some good progress in Network Policy API. And we're ready to cut a couple releases. There's going to be hopefully 2 kind of quickly back to back. The first one is the link I posted, 016, that will give us a release set of APIs prior to the FQDN feature that was just merged last week. And then we'll get that merged and then get another release cut for V020, which will include FQDN and egress traffic selection, and we'll kind of be tracking our head at the moment. So looking for review on those PRs.
Awesome. Andrew, I feel like I owe you an apology. I have had no bandwidth to pay attention to this topic for the last, I don't know, 6 to 9 months.
No worries.
Well, no, I mean, I am worried because I'm very interested in the topic and I hear about it from users and customers all the time. But I have not been able to move it up the priority list with all the other things that I've been tackling. I really, really want to pay attention to this and I want to spend some time on it. One thing that has been really helpful for me in the past personally has been to set up a meeting where we actually just walk through the API and explain it and can ask questions in real time.
Yeah.
Like Rob did this for Gateway a few times and it was super useful.
Sure.
It doesn't need to be just for me. It can be an open meeting. But I would love to do that if that's possible.
Yeah, sounds good. Antonio and Dan have already kind of been active in that review PR, which is nice. Antonio's gotten way more involved recently, obviously with all his work. So that's been great. We can set up a one-off meeting, or do you want to try to just make our next community meeting and walk through it?
Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, yeah. When I've done this before, what I've done is I've set up a meeting that I can try and find a time where as many maintainers of the project and SIGNet leads can meet, and then open it up to whoever else might want to show up. But it is useful to have a fully focused time because it very easily takes the full hour. And, you know, if we're trying to still do triage in here and usually have a few agenda items, it's hard to mix that into.
Yeah,
no, totally. And I meant the network policy API meetings, not this one. But I'm happy to schedule something with just kind of the core. I mean, I want the folks who have had NPEPs merged in this timeline there. So that's Raul and Surya.
That's fair.
They can
and
speak
you didn't say it, but you make a fair point. Like maybe I should make time to come to your meeting instead of making a different meeting. That's reasonable. When are the network?
Tuesdays, right before the Gateway API meeting. Tuesday. Every other Tuesday, sorry.
Every other. Was it this week or next week?
Or maybe it's right after
Tuesday. Is what time is that Pacific? Is it 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. Pacific?
I'm gonna have to go look now because I was getting confused. 9.
It's right after the API one.
Oh yeah, there it is.
We go to both.
Okay, right after. So 9 a.m. is right before would be rough for Pacific time. But
so that seems reasonable. I'm gonna throw my wrinkle in here. It's vacation season. A lot of people are going out on vacation before the summer ends and their kids have to go back to school. Let
me coordinate to make sure the right people are going to be there, and then I will make sure that you are pinged independently just to remind you.
Well, looking ahead to when would the next one be? It would be
not next Tuesday, but the following. So the 30th.
Yeah, the 30th. I should actually be here. That's like the 2 days in between my things. So if you can arrange to do a deep dive on the 30th, I can make it to that meeting.
Okay, I'm adding a note. I'll let you know. That should work tentatively. Like I said, again, I want to make sure the right people are there from our community.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and like really, to be honest with you too, we probably should have been cutting releases at a faster pace, but we were not as thorough as we should have been in reaching back out here and like kind of stalling on waiting for reviews from y'all. So I'm trying to get that ramped back up.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the end of our planned agenda. Does anybody else have other topics that they would like to discuss with the group here? Okay. I will be out the next one of these 2 weeks from today. I will be gone. So Shane or Zappo or Antonio can run the show. The agenda is open on the doc. I hope you all know where the doc is. The next topics block is completely empty. So let's fill it up with some good topics. By that point, the code freeze will have been effected. And so we can start looking ahead at what we want to tackle in the 132 cycle. Yay. The treadmill continues. We've had a pretty good last couple of releases as we've drawn down on the number of open keps, and we've really closed off a bunch of work, which has been awesome. I think it gives us a lot of breathing room for bringing in new work. So time to start coming up with new crazy ideas. Let's convert service to a CRD.
Why not? Let's fix DNS first.
Let's agree
Is
on
that too far?
a fixed set of rules for releasing CRDs and upstream first.
That seems like a really good idea. I
That's
will tell you, I've spent a bunch of time in the last few weeks looking at the dynamic resources API and stuff. And the work that we did in talking about admin network policy and the API design there actually was really valuable in that it had forced me to have done my homework about thinking about some of these complicated, overlapping sets of fields topics. So I just wanted to mention that that work I think paid off, and I'm going to try to write up a little bit more about reasonable ways to think about one-of-ish APIs.
Yeah, there's also new tooling. Like there's enum validation. There's different newer enum validations that make this that make it more intrinsic than it used to be. Like we relied on cube builder, max item set in a struct, but now you can specify one of an enum, like with tooling. So it's a little different.
In fact, Joe, Betts, and I have been sort of tinkering with doing more of that for built-in types too, using some of the same style of annotations to generate the validations that people currently write by hand.
And it's extensible, which is kind of the key.
Totally.
To all of that. So okay, because I've been thinking about if we need to update the way we do it internally to network policy API, but we can talk about that.
Okay.
In the meeting.
All right, well then let's adjourn 15 minutes early, and everybody enjoy your day, and I will see you all in a few weeks. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Great. Thanks, everybody.